let's get moving. Let's start jogging in place, all right? Or bouncing, the good old wrestling bounce, bouncing from feet to feet. Ready to go each side, all right? First, we're gonna start off, 3 each side, all right? Lunge and swipe. Good, nice and bouncing after. Once you're done, make sure you're bouncing, bouncing. Good, now we got our 2-step, double knee drop, all right, swipe in both hands. Let's get 5 of these. Good, good. The next part, my favorite, let's see those hops, all right? 2-footed bound, as high as we can go. Let's get 4 of them. Good. So after we've gone through our jogging progression, all right, now we're into our gymnastics portion. So let's hit 4 forward rolls. Make sure we're turning, getting back into it, nice and quick. Don't forget, guys, if we can't go over our neck, we have our shoulder options as well. All right, up to our feet, all the way up to our feet. Bouncing, bouncing. One thing, guys, after every single time, usually we'll be jogging around a circle, but I want us at least bouncing or jogging in place so our feet are always moving. All right, we're getting our heart rate up. All right, 3 backwards rolls. Good, bouncing when we're done, bouncing when we're done. All right, slowing it back down, slow penetrations. If we're tight on space, do a little knee switch, go back in the other direction. Good. All right, after our slow penetrations, stretching out our hip flexors, our quads, our hamstrings. All right, now we're gonna start getting in a little stance. We have our bound step. Let's not forget our footwork, move our trail leg to our near foot. All right, and bound forward. All right, we got our bound steps, 3 each side. Two. 2, 3, 3, good. Bouncing when we're done. Making sure we're always moving, always moving. All right, next thing is our penetration steps. Make sure heel, knee, toe, trail leg up, drive across, all right? Make sure we're getting our hands involved before we get up, drive across. Let's go, 3 each side. One more. Good, bouncing, bouncing. After our penetration steps, back to our gymnastics progression. All right, we got cartwheels. Let's get 2 each side, all right? Be careful if we can't do both sides. All right, let's just go one side, but make sure we're getting 4 cartwheels each, okay? Good. Now, I don't know about you guys, but you should have a little sweat on your forehead, all right? We're gonna hit our finisher, spike that heart rate, right? 5 seconds high knees, 5 seconds foot fire, 5 knees to chest, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Finishing off, bouncing. All right, lowering our heart rate, controlling our breathing to get us ready for practice and our matches. Cool, so once we're done with our active piece of our warm-up, now we're gonna get into our stretch. Now that we're sweating, all right, now that our body's a little bit warmer. So first thing I'm gonna start off with is a Russian stretch. I'm just gonna bounce from side to side here. Get a nice, good stretch in. After that, bring it back up, straddle those feet, go from side to side, hanging down in the middle, making sure we're getting a good stretch. Once you feel good there, push it back to your butt, keep those legs spread, all right. Down to the right, down to the left, down to the middle. All right, just work through these few different positions. Try to get as deep as we can, guys. Flexibility is super important in the sport of wrestling, all right, both on the offensive and the defensive side. So it's really important that we take this time at the beginning of practice or before our competitions to really get warm, really stretch out. From here, pull one of those legs back, lean back into it, stretch that quad a little bit. Switch. Now, I'm not gonna spend too much time in all these positions. You know, I already went through a good warm-up. I'm nice and sweating. I feel ready to go to start easing into it, you know, easing into my wrestling, my position, my stance and motion, all right, until I start getting to my penetrations. Bend that front one forward, all right, dig in here to a pigeon stretch. Stretch that inside thigh, outside thigh, other side. Push back into a downward dog. If you guys know yoga at all right now, just stretching my shoulders, stretching my calves. All right, now we're gonna get into our neck bridges. All right, I like to go through a neck bridge progression. So first, we're gonna start with our knees on the mat, hands on the mat, head on the mat. Just gonna start rolling my neck out. Nice and light, nice and slow. All right, next up, I want those knees off the mat, so we're on our toes, but our hands and head are still on the mat. Good. Get those hands off the mat, behind our back. Put all that weight on our neck. Start working on that neck strength, neck flexibility. Good. Good. From here, I want us to either high leg over to our back bridge, okay? If we can't high leg, the other option is to flip over, but we want to be very careful of where we're at, all right, and how much space we have. So if we can high leg over, we're gonna high leg to our back bridge. All right, if we can't high leg, we're gonna flip over the top, catch ourselves in this nice back bridge situation. All right, make sure we're active here. We're rolling our neck, trying to touch our nose to the mat, all right? Going to both sides, trying to get our nose and our eye sockets to touch the mat. All right, one finisher I like to do here is 10 upside down push-ups, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. From here, roll it up. Now I'm ready to go. So today we're gonna hit the first basic skill out of the 6 basic skills of wrestling, and that skill is position. So position goes in a lot of different ways in wrestling. You can talk about your lineup position, you can talk about position in on a shot, position in on defense, position from the bottom position, from the top, okay? But right now, I want to focus on what is good position and why is it important. So for us, our good position as wrestlers is our wrestling stance. So what is a wrestling stance? When we think about a wrestling stance, it's a nice athletic position where we're nice and agile, ready to move, all right? Ready to be active on our feet in both defense and offense. So what that looks like is bent knees, okay? My butt is nice and low. I don't want to bend at the waist. I want to bend in the legs, okay? Because I want to have my head up, my back straight, my hips are in, knees bent, all right? And I'm ready to move. So when I think about my lineup position as a wrestler, we have this red line and this green line in the center of the mat. So when we line up on the line, if I'm a right leg lead, I'm probably going to put my right leg in front. If I'm a left leg lead, I'm going to put my left leg in front, okay? And there's also this thing in wrestling that we're going to call our square stance. So our square stance is where we don't favor one side or the other. We just have both facing forward. But again, our head is up, our back is straight, and our hips are in. We're bent at the knees, our butt is low. We're not bent at the waist, okay? We're bent at the knees in this very good position. The reason why our head is up, our back is straight, and our hips are in are for multiple reasons. When we're standing across the line here from our opponent, we need our head up because we need to see our opponent. Okay? If our head's down, we can only see the mat. So we need our head up so we can watch with our eyes, all right? See where our opponent's going so we can either attack or be ready to defend. But also because our head is our first line of defense. So on the defensive side, we need our head up, all right? Because if I have an opponent attacking me, I need to be able to move my feet, use my head as my first line of defense to block the shot, okay? So my head is up, my back is straight, my hips are in, okay? Another thing, when I'm thinking about position, I want to have my elbows to my side, right? My elbows are in. We don't want our elbows out here because this gives space for our opponents to get underneath. So our good stance, we have our head up, our back straight, our hips in, our elbows are in, okay? And I like to think that my core is always going to be facing wherever my eyes are looking. So what I mean by that is I don't want my core to be broken like this. This makes my position weak, okay? This allows my opponent to start creating angles on me, to start moving to the side, and having opportunities to attack, okay? And if my head is thrown out of the position, then I'll never be able to down block, to sprawl, to have good defensive position with head up, back straight, hips in. Okay, so again, our good stance, we line up on the line, right leg forward, my hands are down. I always want to be ready on the whistle so that when I shake hands with my opponent, all right, I'm ready to either attack or I'm ready to move my feet and down block. So again, we have our good stance, our good position for both offensive and defensive side. We got our head up. We're watching where our opponent is. All right, our elbows are in, not out. All right, we're not reaching, breaking our core. We're keeping everything tight, and everything is facing one direction. Okay? From a right leg lead, that's what it's going to look like. From our square stance, all right, again, nice square, facing forward. My elbows are in, my hands are down, my head is up, my back is straight, my hips are in. All right, when I'm in this position, it makes it a lot easier for us to get into our shots, but it also makes it a lot easier for us to get into our sprawls. So when we line up across the circle from our opponent, first thing we need to focus on is where's my position, okay? And one good check is to see if we're low enough. So the one thing I like to do to check if I'm low enough is just to see, can I touch the mat? Can I touch the mat for my stance? Yep. Good, I'm low enough. All right, if my stance is up here, I'm probably not bent at the knees enough, my butt isn't low enough, okay? And my hips might not be in. All right, if I'm standing up, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because I want to match my opponent's head level. That's part of our head position. So if my opponent gets in a stance, we want to be matched head level, all right, in good position, ready to attack and defend. Now that we know what our good position looks like from our stance when we shake hands with our opponent, the next thing we need to move into is motion and how we're going to create angles onto our opponent, all right? How we're going to move in and close the gap, close the distance, close the space. How are we going to get our hands onto our opponent to start working tie-ups and controlling ties, clearing ties? So a lot of these things are created from how we move our feet. So when I think about motion, I think about my foot movement as I'm moving in my stance, okay? When I think about motion too, I need to think about staying in my stance. Just because I'm moving doesn't mean that I can now raise up out of my stance, break that good position of head up, back straight, hips in, knees bent. All right, I want to make sure I keep this good position as I'm moving. So we have a few different things when we think about motion. We have moving forward, which we call stalking, all right? We would have a little bit of movement backwards, which will start being a little bit more of a circling, all right, or a defensive thought. Then we have our lateral motion, which we consider side to side, and then we have circling. So the first thing I want to talk about is stalking forward, okay? So if we're a right leg lead, we're in this good position, our elbows are in, heads up, back is straight, hips are in, knees are bent, all right? When I stalk forward, okay, I'm going to start moving forward in my stance, okay? One thing I am doing is I'm keeping my lead hand down. So as I'm moving forward and stalking, my lead hand is down just in case my opponent shoots on this. If he shoots and my hand is down, all right, I should be ready to sprawl in good position. So stalking, if we're in our square stance, might look both hands down, little choppy steps forward, all right, as I'm moving forward in my stance. Notice how I never raise up my level. When I'm stalking forward, I have to make sure that I'm leading with my head. My head is up so I can see my opponent, so I can look for my scoring opportunities, but also be ready to defend. And also, all right, if I'm raising my level up as I'm moving in, I'm allowing space for my partner to attack. So this is where we put together our good position and our stalking moving forward, all right, to put pressure on our opponent. Notice one little thing that I did there. Just how when we were in our stance, we touched the mat to check that we're low enough. As I'm stalking forward, I might even do the same to make sure I'm low enough. We need to be really low in our stance, all right, to be ready to get to our attacks, but also to defend. So that's stalking. So now we're going to go for the opposite, which would be a little bit moving backwards. So when I'm moving backwards in my stance, one thing that I don't want to do is be on my heels. Okay? If I'm on my heels, that gives my opponent the opportunity to blast through, to drive through, right? And all my weight is backwards, all right? My weight is back through my hips, all right? I'm not agile on my toes, ready to defend, okay? Ready to cut an angle. So when I move backwards in my stance, okay, right now I'm a square stance. I'm going to move backwards, but if you can notice, look how I'm on my toes. As I move backwards in my stance, I'm on my toes. My hands are down. I'm in this low stance. My head is ready. My eyes are looking at my opponent's hips, reading, ready to either attack and shoot or to sprawl and run the angle. So as I move forward in my stance, right, hands are down nice and low. All right, maybe I'm checking. I'm on my toes moving forward. And when I'm going backwards in my stance, it's the same thing. I'm on my toes, but I'm just moving backwards. And I'm ready to cut an angle, create motion with my feet, all right, and cut this angle on my opponent. So now we've gone through stalking forward, moving backwards in our stance. So the next thing we're going to get into is lateral motion. So our lateral motion would be side to side, all right? If we're in a square stance, it's very simple, very similar to a shuffle step. But again, don't forget our position, don't forget our good stance. Hands are low, check our stance, touch the mat. All right, now we're ready to move side to side. All right, very similar to a drill like we would do in football. All right, moving side to side, juking out our opponent. All right, being quick, light on our feet. When we think about motion, when we think about moving in our stance, we want to think about nice, light feet, light movements, quick movements, all right, being nice and agile, ready to move, nice and quick. So in our lateral motion, all right, we want to keep our center of gravity nice and low. We don't want to raise up and come out of our stance. We want to make sure head is low, elbows are in, head is up, back is straight, hips are in as I'm moving laterally. Okay. Now, as you start to put all of these together, you're stalking, you're moving backwards, and your lateral motion, this is what constitutes what we call stance in motion. Okay. Stance in motion is when we incorporate our good stance, our good positioning, our feet movements, okay? Something we'll get to, fakes, level changes, hand movements, all right? All these things come together to allow us to shadow drill, shadow wrestle in what we call stance in motion. So I want to give you guys a little bit of an example of what that looks like. First, I'm going to go with a square stance, then I'm going to go with a right stance, then I'm going to go with a left stance. So, my square stance, checking the mat, stalking forward, moving back, lateral motion, side to side. One thing with my lateral motion is that we might start circling a bit. I say lateral motion side to side, but we all know we wrestle in a circle. So we're going to have to circle our feet, all right, to create angles as well. So part of lateral motion would be circling. So I may go to the side first, then I cut an angle and make that lateral motion circular. So again, stance in motion with a square stance. With our right leg stance, ideally I want to keep whatever lead leg I have forward, okay? Now, left leg forward. So, if we do have a little bit of space constraints in wherever we're practicing right now, we want to keep everything nice and tight. But we want to also keep everything very intentional. The way I'm moving my feet, when I'm in my position, I'm visualizing an opponent in front of me. I'm visualizing a partner faking, okay? I'm visualizing my own shot, my high crotch, my single leg, okay? But as I'm moving around in my stance and motion, okay, I know I can take space away from my opponent, I can crowd them, I can force them into bad shots, and I can open up my own scoring opportunities by using my good position, my good motion to create angles, start incorporating fakes, level changes, and control ties to get to our attacks and our defense. So we just talked about stalking forward, moving backwards in our stance, and also moving laterally and circling. But I want to zone in on one specific type of circling that I've actually made a huge part of my own routine right now. And we call this circling corkscrew, the corkscrew circle. Okay, and the idea behind the corkscrew circle is to cut our opponent off at an angle, okay, and come at them from a way that they feel threatened, all right? We create an angle on our opponent with our footwork, okay, and sometimes our hands to make our opponent feel under attack and feel threatened by our motion. So if we watch wrestling, sometimes we see these big, wide circles, right? We have our center circle here, we have our big, wide circle around the mat, and sometimes in stance and motion, we see people taking nice, big, long circles, okay? Which, yes, that is motion, but when we are moving into our opponent, we want to be a little bit more focused, a little bit more intentional on how we close that gap and how we circle in. So we have our lateral motion, but now there's a little bit of a difference and a little bit of a nuance that we're going to add in. So besides moving our feet, we're also going to think about our hip placement. So I should be in a good stance here where my head is up, my back is straight, my hips are in, my knees are bent, elbows are in. So I start circling laterally, okay? And now for my corkscrew circle, the one difference is that I'm going to turn my feet and my hips to a whole different angle. So instead of just this wide circle, see how my feet are very square, okay, and very open to my opponent. When I corkscrew circle, I turn on a dime, okay? I make it a lot tighter. The idea behind the corkscrew circle is not big, wide circles, but tight corkscrews, okay, that ultimately make my opponent feel under attack. Okay, my opponent's going to be worried about squaring up and facing me as I'm taking this ground with my footwork of a corkscrew circle. So if I'm a right leg lead, the corkscrew circle is going to be a lot from my trail leg. So just like we did on our bound step, our trail leg came near to our lead leg and we bounded out. Our trail leg's going to come, and instead of bounding, we're going to use that to just turn the direction of our hips. So we circle, and now I do this little micro movement, this angle change with my hips that allows me to face my opponent, okay? Now, if I'm beating the left side of my opponent's body, I'm going to run a single down. Okay? But the idea is to make our opponent feel threatened, feel under attack with our footwork, with our good stance, with our motion. So if we're a lefty, what that's going to look like is trail leg comes near, and I do this corkscrew circle, and I change the angle with my hips and the direction of my feet. One thing I'm just noticing as I'm going through this now is I'm facing straight ahead, and now when I hit this corkscrew circle, I almost make a 90-degree turn with my body. Again. So this corkscrew circle idea is a lot more of a circular motion. You can see me turning a lot more on a dime rather than wide circles, all right, around. So again, we're nice and tight. In our good stance, elbows in, head up, back straight, hips in, knees bent. All right, we're making this really tight. So that is a version of our lateral movement called the corkscrew circle. We kind of highlighted how in wrestling position is everywhere. Position is from our starting positions, all right, from our lineups to creating opportunities for good offense, good defense. But in our folk style wrestling, we have that top and bottom. So I want to talk a little bit about our position from the bottom referee's position. So the first thing we need to highlight in our position is the way we're going to line up. So on a wrestling mat, we're given the red line, the green line, and these two parallel lines. So this is our marker for how we're going to set up. Our knees have to be behind the line, and our hands have to be above. Those are the two stipulations that we as the bottom wrestler have to follow. Now, there's a few other little things that we can do to gain an advantage from this position. Some things we can do positionally that can already start putting the top wrestler at a disadvantage. So when you line up in the referee's position, all right, we want to be a little bit light on our hands. Some people like to barely hover them over the mat, while others like to just put a little weight on their hands, okay? But the most important part about our position, all right, is that we know where we're going, we have a first move, okay, and we're ready when the whistle blows. So I had a coach that used to he calls this position the whistle start. And whether you're on the top or the bottom, you need to be ready off the whistle on the whistle start. For the bottom wrestler, that means we're thinking about our first move, okay? So if our partner lines up on the left, when we think about position from the bottom, we have to think about sealing off, okay? If our partner's on the left side, just like in our good stance on our feet, our elbows were in, all right? We're gonna come and seal off so we can start opening up, all right, and getting to work from the bottom position. So again, our position lining up, we got knees behind the line, hands in front of the line. Another little thing you guys might notice, some people like to curl their toes here, others like to sit on their heels and allow their laces to be on the mat. I'd say this is more of a personal preference on what you feel comfortable with and what your first move is. I personally like to line up on my toes because I feel like I can drive off of those toes, all right, to either start stepping up, sealing off, and coming up from the bottom position to a stand-up, sealing off for my escape, okay? Another thing, right, it allows me to move forward, to start creating space, creating motion between my partner's hips and my hips. So with our position, we want to have a nice, strong referee's position base, okay, and we're very conscious of that whistle start. We're ready for the top man to line up, the referee to say set, and blow the whistle. And when the referee blows the whistle, if our partner's on the left, okay, we have options to either start sealing off, to start inside leg stand up, outside leg stand up, sit outs, all right, and there's a lot of options that we can have from the bottom. But the first thing that's super important is the seal off. So we're gonna visualize our opponent on the left side of us, okay? Got my toes dug in the mat, knees behind the line, hands in front of the line, and off the whistle, I wanna beat my opponent to the inside by sealing off with my left hand. So my left elbow is coming right inside to my left hip, all right? And I'm sealing off from my opponent getting underneath my arms. If we're on the top position, we always want to be under the arms. And if we're on the bottom, we want to always keep sealed off, all right? Start working to get our opponent outside from underneath until we can get up to our feet and escape. So our referee's position, I'm just going to give you another angle from the backside here. All right, knees behind the line, hands in front of the line. I have my toes loaded up. All right, and I'm ready, nice and strong, ready to either seal off the whistle, all right, or to explode and start moving off the whistle. And that's what our referee's position from the bottom position should look like. Now that we've worked through what good position looks like and how to incorporate our good position, good stance in the stance in motion, I want to give you guys a few drills that we can do on our own, at home, in the wrestling room, wherever. So if you have either a tennis ball, a baseball, I have a lacrosse ball right here, this is a great tool to start working on our position. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm a right leg lead, okay? I'm going to get in my right leg stance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my lacrosse ball right underneath my armpit, okay? So I'm a right leg lead. I'm going to put it underneath my right armpit. So the goal of this drill is to really focus on keeping our elbows in, all right? Because if our elbows come out, the ball is going to roll. So if we don't keep our elbow in here, all right, the ball is going to drop out, which is a sure telltale sign that our elbows were out. So we're going to get in our stance. I'm a right leg lead. I have the ball underneath my right armpit, okay? I'm going to start just moving a little bit back and forth in my stance, keeping my arm down, all right? Starting to move in this stance in motion and making sure that as I'm moving, my elbow stays down and this ball stays pinched underneath my armpit. So the next thing we can start doing is start involving our hands. So when we have this ball underneath our armpit, the only way the ball is going to come out is if our elbow comes out. We can still reach up a little bit as if we're collar tying, all right? Looks a little awkward like I have an alligator arm, but I'm keeping my elbow down as I'm reaching up, which allows this ball to stay pinned underneath my armpit. From here, I can start working on corkscrew circling, using my hands as a place replace, okay, and keeping this ball underneath my armpit. If we're a lefty lead, our left leg's forward, it's going to go underneath our left armpit. And again, we want to keep our left arm down, elbow tight to our side, all right, not lifting up at our elbow so that the ball falls out, but that we're moving, corkscrew circling with our elbow down. So that's drill number one, okay? Ball underneath our armpit. Whatever lead side, keeping our elbow tight to our side, not coming elbows out where the ball would fall. The second one is, if I'm a righty lead, this one is just to make sure that we're keeping our hands down, ready to defend our legs. So we're going to place the ball on the outside of our lead leg. We're going to use the inside of our elbow to pin the ball to the outside leg. And now we're going to start moving very slightly in our stance. All right, we don't want to make too big of movements because we want to focus on elbow down. All right, if my partner shoots on me, all right, we're going to be able to sprawl because this elbow's down, this hand is down. Okay, if we're a left leg lead, right on the outside, nice and low in our stance, right? If I check my stance, should be able to touch the mat. Okay, pinning with my elbow here as I'm moving. So those are our two position-focused drills with any type of ball we have. We either have tennis ball, lacrosse ball, baseball. Now we're going to get into a few motion-based drills. So the first one's just a little bit fun. You can start incorporating this in your warm-up if you want. But really, it's to get our feet moving and our body creating angles. So this one's just a figure 8 drill. So we're just going to run our body in a figure 8. But see how tight my feet are, okay? Once I create that angle, I want to run through that figure 8. All right. Picking up the pace, making it a little bit faster, switching directions. All right. That is going to condition our ankles a little bit. But again, this idea of corkscrew circling, keeping our circular motion very tight, all right, to create angles on our opponent. So that one's a little more fun. This one is a lot more wrestling based. So picture a small circle in front of you, okay? And what I want to do is I want to start making tight circles with my foot motion. All right, we're thinking about the corkscrew circle the whole time. All right, we're going to be in our stance, moving our feet nice and quick, but keeping super tight. All right, so we're going to go for 30 seconds, and when I say switch, we're going to switch. All right, so go, switch, 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 switch. One thing that I just noticed about myself, I think I was a little bit too high in my stance. All right, I was doing these circles here, where when I'm in my stance and I'm circling, I want to have a good position, good stance. My head is lower than my opponent's, ready to block, ready to attack, and ready to create angles. So I need to get in a better stance, make these circles nice and tight. Thinking about that corkscrew motion, right? Back step, quarter turn. Back step, quarter turn. Back step, quarter turn. All right, that's how we're incorporating corkscrew motion or corkscrew circling into our circular drills. All right, so now that we've worked through our position and our stance and motion, we're going to go into a little bit of a workout here. We're going to do 4 exercises for a minute each, 4 rounds, with a minute rest in between. So we're going to hit push-ups, split squats, planks, followed by a stance and motion go. So make sure as we're doing these, guys, that we're really focusing on the form, the position, the technique of each of these. And I'm going to demonstrate these going through just so you guys are all aware. So first thing we got is push-ups. So let's get up in push-up position, throw 1 minute on the clock, and let's go. Now if your arms and chest are starting to get tired here and you feel like you might have to stop, let's just hold our push-up position, all right? Keep a good, nice plank hold. Work our core at the same time, all right? If we can continue to bang them out, let's continue as many reps as possible in this minute, all right? If we feel like we can't even do that, we might need to drop down to our knees a little bit and get some push-ups from our knees here. But the goal is to keep moving as many times as we can, all right? We want to get as many push-ups as possible. Again, if you get to the point where you can't do any more, hold this strong push-up position, all right? Work on that mental toughness until that minute's up. Time. All right, first round, push-ups, good. So as we're taking time this rest, let's get our breathing under control, lower that heart rate a little bit as we get ready for round number 2. So in our second round, we're going to do split squats. So what I want us to do, all right? I have a center line here. I'm gonna split my feet about 1.5 feet apart, okay? I'm gonna load all the weight onto my front foot, hands on my hips, all right? What I'm gonna do, I want you to go 10 each side, okay? Switch feet as quick as we can, loading back into it, 10 the opposite side. All right, we're gonna go through this as many times as possible for the full minute. Make sure those feet are stagnant, all right? Working the muscles that we've worked in both our positioning and our stance in motion. Good, good. We want to build that leg conditioning up so we can hold our stance for a long time, for 6 minutes, 7 minutes, all right? 10 minutes if we're getting into overtime, as long as we need to, all right? We got to have that conditioning built up so we're ready to go no matter how long that match is, all right? Round 3, we're getting into a plank, all right? In our plank, we want to be on our elbows, our hands as forward as possible, toes in the mat, and we want to keep our body as straight as possible. All right, when we think about our good position, we have head up, back straight, hips in. All right, we may be horizontal with the ground, but we want to make sure that our core is tight and our back is straight. All right, we're going to hold position here for a minute. Again, as we're going through, if it gets a little too hard, a little too difficult, we can bring these knees down, all right? But again, we want to keep our back as straight as possible. We don't want our hips to sink down here. We want to keep a nice, strong core, all right, and hold this position. If you guys feel like your core is starting to hurt a little bit, we can move over into a side plank here, okay? Switching sides as need be. All right, but again, if you guys see, my rib cage is flat, my back is flat, all right? My core is nice and tight, and I'm in this strong position. Time. All right, shake it out for our last round. All right, our last round is gonna be stance in motion. So, we really want to focus on tight circles, corkscrew circling, keeping our elbows in, keeping our knees bent, our hips down, nice and low, ready to move. All right. The goal is to keep our feet moving the whole time. In this minute, we shouldn't have anybody standing around. All right. We always want to be moving our feet in some way, shape, or form. All right. If we plant our feet, that's an opportunity for our opponent to attack us. So we want to keep those feet moving, keeping a step ahead of the game, visualizing my opponent in front of us. Okay? If you want to challenge yourself a little bit, start throwing in some level changes, some fakes, some penetrations, some sprawls. All right, we're going to go into these skills in a lot more detail, but if you feel comfortable with them, start throwing them in to your stance in motion. Notice my feet are moving, corkscrew circling, elbows are in. Good motion, good position. All right. Keeping those pointers in mind. Head up, back straight, hips in, knees bent, ready to attack. So, that's our circuit. That was round 1. We got that 4 times through with 60-second rest in between. All right. I want to know how many push-ups you can hit. To recap the workout we just did, we hit 4 rounds of 4 exercises. So our first exercise is push-ups, as many reps as possible, split squats, as many reps as possible, followed by a minute plank, followed by a minute stance in motion. In between each of them, we're gonna have a 60-second rest. And once we finish all 4 exercises, we're gonna repeat that for 4 rounds.